thank you all for joining me and Tracy here. As you can tell from the title here, we are talking about how we can optimize student success here at each of your different schools or school districts, university level. And we really are saying reach for the stars because we really want you guys to reach for it. And we do think it's very obtainable and it's closer than you think. And so while me and Tracy are going to introduce ourselves, I'd actually love also from everyone else that is here to throw in the chat your name, where you're coming from in terms of either school or organization, and maybe just throw in something fun that you're looking forward to this summer. That way it's not just me and Tracy talking. Cool. So a little bit about me. I am currently an education industry executive here at Microsoft. It's just a little fancy name that they give you in terms of just having the privilege to get to talk with folks like you all and talk a lot about strategy and how to transform your schools in a much more efficient and optimal way. And that all comes down to why we're here today and comes down to why I have such a strong passion for the student experience, because I hope like all of you guys, I can really trace back to all the moments where I have felt really seen and heard and felt engaged in the classroom and all the moments that I didn't. And I do think it is a huge responsibility for us to give that to the students today. I am based out in Seattle, Washington, technically, but actually right now I am back home in the Bay Area with my family, just spending some time with them. And so that also comes down to some fun things about me. I am a huge Bay Area sports fan. So if anyone is also a Warriors fan, we had a huge win. And if anyone is an anti-Warriors fan, that's okay too. I completely understand. And then my alma mater was University of Washington. So I am a big UW football fan, and they're the ones that do need a little bit of work, in my opinion. And then some fun things I do on the side. I'm actually currently running a youth camp where we get a bunch of kids together. We do a lot of workshopping, fun activities, and also working a lot on their personal development and self-growth. And also an extra fun thing, something new. I started this about maybe a month ago. Just got into golf. My goal right now is to perfect my golf swing. So I think that's what I'll be working on this summer. So if anyone has any tips and tricks, please let me know. I'll pass it over to Tracy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Woods. It's very nice to be with you guys today. Very excited to talk to you about student success and data and artificial intelligence, especially. I'm an Azure specialist in US education. So basically my role is to work with institutions, higher ed, K-12, academic medical centers on their digital transformation and helping them with their cloud strategy and cloud journey. I've actually been at Microsoft just a couple of years. I came out of higher education. So prior to joining Microsoft, I was the Chief Technology Officer at University of Maryland Global Campus, serving about 100,000 students around the world. And prior to that, I was the Chief Information Officer at American Public University System, also serving about 100,000 students fully online. So one of the things that I love about education is how much you get to interact with students and how much they actually teach you about the world. It's a passion of mine, and I'm really excited about having the opportunity to support technology that enables institutions to meet their goals. On the side, I am a volunteer English as a second language teacher. This taught me that English is actually really hard. I don't know how people come to this country and learn the language, but it also gave me an opportunity to use some of the tools that some of our faculty and instructors use to engage students. And so I found that to be a really interesting experience. And just as a side note, as somebody who's completely non-creative, I'm very excited about the fact that I have two sons who are professional musicians. They make almost enough money to pay for their own ramen as professional musicians, but they are living and loving the dream, and that makes me really happy. So, and that's it about me.
Oh, awesome. All right, now let's just hop right into it. And so if we look at where we are today, right, and this is no question, we are in a very, very innovative time of our lives, and we are in the thick of the fourth industrial revolution, and we have all this disruptive technology coming into our society and changing the way that we do work and changing how our day-to-day lives are working as well, from different things like IoT, AR, VR, machine learning. And so where is that in line with how we are transforming education? And there is a lot of research that is showing that the gap is getting a little bit bigger and bigger. And even though that's not to say that education itself is not transforming alongside it, but it is at a much slower pace. So how can we accelerate our entire education system while keeping up with this fourth industrial revolution, and also making sure that our students today are well equipped with all the tools necessary to be active in this transformative society? And so this really goes into the next point of, talking about what are your current school or organization's mission and goals that you're trying to achieve. So some of the things that Tracy and I kind of thought about were things like how important it is for institutions or your school systems to meet your recruitment and your retention goals, and how are you going to engage your students and build that community? How are you taking all of that data and taking all the tools that you have to make sure that students are ready for the future? Are they ready right now? Are they ready for that next step for college readiness and for career readiness? And then also, how is your entire ecosystem looking inside your institution, from a security standpoint, from a management standpoint? And so I really want you guys to really think and reflect on that and take a moment to put that in your back pocket. We'll get back to that actually, but really think about what is it that you're trying to achieve. And me and Tracy are here to help you guys in this presentation to show you that it's very attainable and you guys can absolutely get there. So I'm going to pass it over to Tracy.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. I guess, okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where AI is used in education. And as we go through this presentation, we're going to share some success stories with you. But I would love to also make sure that we're hearing from you about what your goals are and maybe your experiences. So please feel free to come off mute if you want to interrupt. If you have questions, post questions in the chat. We really want to make this a discussion and make this time meaningful for you. So some of the places that we're seeing AI in education as really good use cases are in personalizing experiences. If you have experience either as a parent or you're working directly with students, you know that the students of today are very forthcoming with data. They give you a lot of information about themselves, and they want you to use it to create an experience that is personal and meaningful and relevant to them. So this is a change, I think, from when I was in college years ago, and we sort of, wound our way through lines and processes and just sort of followed the crowd and understood that everybody had to go through all of the steps. Students today they just want to deal with the administrative processes and the learning components that are really relevant to their goals. We're seeing AI used in nudges and interventions and even coaching. So, you know about me and you know what my goals are and you can help me with my next steps. We're seeing it in learning assistance. We're seeing it in achieving administrative excellence and advancing institutional effectiveness. And we keep those two things on the list when we talk about student success, with the assumption that anything that you do as an institution or as a school to streamline your processes or speed up the administrative experience or create better visibility so that your institution runs more effectively, the students are the beneficiary of that work, because that frees your staff and your faculty up to have higher value conversations with students, and it also frees up resources to put into the learning experience. Jennifer, can I advance the slides or do you need to do them? Okay.
I got to do it. Are you seeing it on your side?
Yep, I'm seeing it. Okay, so we'd love to hear from you. What's the biggest school-wide challenge that you're trying to address right now? And you can put your answers in the chat or feel free to come off mute.
Want us raising our hands? What do you want?
There's a brave soul. So I'm not that experienced with Zoom. Feel free to raise your hand or just dive right in.
Yeah, come off mute, throw in the chat, whatever you want.
Enrollment.
Creating student community, increasing enrollment.
When you say enrollment, do you mean getting new students into the funnel or getting them all the way through the funnel so that they actually
All the way through the funnel.
All the way through the funnel?
Matriculated in class, in the chair, in the seat.
And then coming back for the next time or just the first time?
Absolutely. I'm in
Got
the
it.
Northeast and we're looking at a demographic cliff here.
Yep. I hear that a lot. I primarily work in the Mid-Atlantic, but also some in the Northeast as well. Okay, so we see enrollment and retention, student engagement in the classroom, generally retention, increasing enrollment, supporting neurodiverse students. And let's see, anything else? Did I miss anything, Jennifer?
No, got most of them.
Okay, technology inequalities, that's a really good one as well, creating student community. And we're going to talk, some of the use cases we're going to talk about, actually, we'll share with you some stories about your peer institutions who have actually started to solve for those things. And then, would love to get your feedback on those.
Yeah, these are all really great. And so I think something that is the big theme across multiple of these, right, is what I truly, truly believe as what technology should be. And I'm just going to fully take off my Microsoft hat right now, because sure, we have these tools, we have these things in place and these technologies in place, but really at the end of the day, technology is not the enabler, you all are. And how can we help support you in that way to let you be the driver of that? And so that does also go into what everything else that you all are saying, right? Retention, enrollment, engagement, all of these things are so, so critical when it comes to the success of a student. And I want to share with you all really quick of this graph over here. So D2L did do some research recently, and I want to point you guys to how these two lines that are curving downwards are directly correlated between a student's grades and then also the activity that they are doing through different engagements. And I do want to say, I don't think that student success is based off of just the grades, but in this research specifically, that is the method that they chose in a more qualitative fashion. So I do want to show that more common than not, we are intervening at a time where it is too late, and we are having this much more reactive sense towards students' behaviors. And so you'll notice that typical intervention happens already at that drop off. A student is already getting those lower grades, and then we come in and intervene. So how can you get them at this holistic intervention point at that peak before they even have that drop off point and really get them where they're at? And that is really where data informed decision making happens, where students are at the center and having that full 360 view of a student's behavior and their persona, and understanding them as a whole is very, very critical. And that's where data is very, very important. And so that's why Tracy and I are here today to really talk about how student success at the center is not just from a outside point of view, but really as a whole person. And that's how we can get them at that holistic intervention at that peak. And so, like I was saying, making data meaningful for you, that is the most important thing. Data is everywhere, it's very ubiquitous. And how are we going to leverage that in the best way possible? So how are we making sure we're using advanced computing and making sure we are taking these large data sets and being productive with it? How are we using machine learning and AI to predict the future patterns of these students, right? It goes back to that holistic intervention. We don't want to wait for a student to fall off. We want to just fully prevent it. and how are we taking data to examine these trends, draw the conclusions, and make sure we're making the accurate decisions so that we are engaging the students properly, we are retaining the students, and we are increasing their enrollments. And all of these all come together. And so throwing some quick numbers at you all. There is research out there that is saying that 74% of chief academic officers today are saying that their institutions are not being effective with the use of data. And this all goes back to what we said in the beginning. We're in the fourth industrial revolution here, and it's time to be innovative. And so it really is shocking to see that less than 15% of institutions are accurately collecting this data and using it effectively. And so this is where we are today. And I know it seems like, and this is why we're back to the theme of reach for the stars. It seems like it's far away, but I'm going to actually even pass it over to Tracy to show to you guys that it really is not that far off, and it's closer than you think.
Thanks, Jennifer. Excuse me. So what we're seeing is, and I want to be really candid about this, right? Because we're not proposing that you go out and buy all new systems and make huge changes in your ecosystem. We know you've got a lot of data. We know you've got a lot of processes. You may have, if you're like some of the institutions that I've worked with and worked at, you have a lot of processes that are very tightly regulated, you know, that they're audited, you have compliance needs, but you also have sort of cobbling together system to system, right? You're moving data manually. You've got all sorts of processes outside the systems, and it's very difficult to get a holistic view. So I would just ask you, raise your hand if you are in a situation where your data is siloed, or if you wish things could go faster for you. What we want to talk about is how do you integrate the tools? How do you integrate tools in the data that you already have in order to get a better view and get better actions so that you can actually do something with it? And it's not about, you know, redoing the entire institution. It's about trying, you know, maybe one small space and creating a bright spot so that you can amplify it and make incremental progress. And so that's what we want to talk about today. And I'm going to share some stories with you, if that's okay. Before I get to that, I want to talk a little bit about student expectations. So what you're seeing on the right hand is actually a persona that we created through a persona journey workshop. So one of the things that we think about is, you know, as institutions, we think we know why students are coming to us, right? And the truth of the matter is students come for a variety of different reasons, and they stop out for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes they're just coming because they want to get a couple of courses. Sometimes they're just coming because they're trying to level up for the next job. Sometimes it's a military rank that they're trying to level up. Sometimes they stop because they've got other pressures going on in their lives, or they've got financial pressures, or they can't figure out their funding, or, you know, it becomes too hard to balance things. So one of the things that we do, that we talk about, is how do you determine who you're serving and really figure out why they came and what their pressures are and what motivates them. What we do know, and, you know, I'm hoping this resonates with you, but let me know if it doesn't. What we do know is that students are becoming much more picky about where they go, and they really are looking for a differentiated experience. So, you know, they're seeing the degree or the credential more as something that that they know they can get at any of the institutions that they choose, that they, you know, they don't necessarily have a choice about where they're going if it's K-12, if they're going to a public system in their zone, but they still want to have a differentiated experience that prepares them for the next step in their life. And they want that experience to be personalized. They want to have full access to rich services, and they want to be able to access those services from wherever they are, whenever they want, from any device. They don't want to necessarily have to come into the classroom or into the campus to get to the services they need. And so when we think about how do we create an environment that leverages the data we have and helps transform the institution so that it's more student-centric, it starts with really understanding the student. And so when we do these journey mapping workshops, what we talk about is who's the student. Now this student here that you're seeing on the right is actually a composite. And this was done with a cross section of institutional staff who touch the student through the administrative journey, getting them into the classroom. And so we created this persona, and then we walked all of the processes from this person's perspective to see where the friction was, to see where we had opportunities to inject technology to actually speed up the processes and reduce friction. So that's one way of getting at it. We have some other ways that we're going to talk about. I think, Jennifer, would you mind advancing?
The next one?
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask Jennifer to talk about sort of how we think about the future of education, and then we'll dive into some success stories.
Yeah, and really based off of what Tracy was saying, right, is back to, I think I saw this in the chat, talking about neurodiversity, and that is the key word. I love that that was thrown in there because every student and the way they think is different. And I wouldn't want to be bucketed in the same category as, say, my sister, who is the same demographic as me, but we do have different ways in which we choose to learn and the way we choose to work. And so this is when we talk about thinking about the future of education. These are the questions that we are trying to ask ourselves, right? And things that I want you guys to even reflect on when you look at these. So what do you guys have in place right now that can be automated and optimized for a better experience for everyone, for faculty, students in the classroom, all kinds? How are you driving engagement through these different collaborative applications? And how can you think about utilizing AI based off of all the things that we just mentioned to drive your business processes in a way where the entire ecosystem can fall into place? I think quite often there's that misconception that things are quite siloed, and sure they might be, but they don't have to be. So how can we use AI to put all that together? Think about what technology partnerships and solutions can help drive your student success from a system-wide and entire institutional standpoint, right? When we say that things are, this North Star is closer than you might think, it's because there are all these partnerships around you, your local communities, your local companies, and your local vendors that can all help you to get to succeed. I think it feels like it's daunting when you're like, how can I, as an individual, just be leveraging all this data? It's too much. Well, you don't have to do it on your own, right? And so also think about the way that data is organized in a way to advance your entire school. So really just think about all of these questions, and it really kind of goes into our next part of wanting to hear from you all. And again, feel free to come off mute or throw in the chat whatever you want. But, if we think about that big North Star, if money was not an issue, if those challenges and barriers in your head weren't an issue, what is that dream for you that you envision for your school? And I want you to paint a full picture of end to end. What does that even look for? What is that full best student experience for your students and faculty and entire ecosystem look like? Feel free to come off mute or throw it in the chat.
Since you said it was okay to come off the chat, I'll throw a sort of an idea. I think that people mentioned sort of comprehensive learner records and things like that in the chat. But I mean, I think that, like, for me, the North Star, the best sort of thing would be if we had some way, some standard sort of across universities that where we would able to really define what skills students are learning,
Mm-hmm.
and and provide that in sort of a comprehensive enough way that as they go through their entire life, we look at the skills and competencies that they brought in, the skills and competencies we're helping them to build, and that they also get from sort of employment and sort of other providers. I mean, really see a technology solution that can really sort of see and facilitate lifelong learning, that where students come in and out of a higher education institution, and that's okay. But I mean, again, I mean that requires, of course, more than just the technology solution. It requires also sort of structural solutions that go beyond a single institution.
Yep. That level of cooperation. But it's interesting. It's interesting when you say that, because it also sort of begs the question of, should you do continuous transfer credit articulation, right? I mean, if I'm going to go out and acquire these skills and I come back, can you re-articulate my transfer credit again to see if I've actually gained more from experiential learning? So I think that's awesome. It is a big, audacious goal, but I think you're absolutely right. Anybody else want to come off mute?
I'll jump in here and say, I think part of the challenge of the question is student desires are diverse. I mean, at a minimum, we have graduate and undergraduate objectives, which are often different. And even in those levels, they're different. I think that I would say that the North Star is really, I think our institutions make a promise to someone when they start working with us. And I think that our North Star should be to deliver on that promise. So if the promise is a better lifestyle, a better job, a career path, I mean, whatever it is, I think that that's what we should fulfill. I think underlying that, and I think we miss this when we focus too much on jobs and skills, is I think we also miss out on our responsibility and kind of personal transformation. And I don't mean that intentfully, like, we are trying to transform them into something, but that we should be facilitating a personal change. I mean, we're in the human development business more than the education business at all levels. So I think I would combine those things together.
I think that's a great point. I have my younger son who I think is, very bright, very talented, opted to go, instead of going to college, he opted to go to a software boot camp. And he got a lot of technical skills. What he didn't get was what he could have gotten on campus, learning from diverse groups and building his life skills and really sort of having his values developed in a way that was outside of his own, kitchen table. And I think you're right. We have to do both. And I think we're challenged as an industry right now because our students are impatient for the job and getting started over the other. And so I think you're right. We have to sort of rebalance.
Yeah. There is actually also research out there showing that the correlation when it comes to student success, when we talk about student success, it often always goes into what's the career that they're going to go into, right? What are the grades that they're getting into? And you made a really great point of saying that it's so much more than that, because a whole student also means on how are we focusing on them from a much more inner perspective as well. So it's a really good point. I know Robert has his hand up.
Oh, hello. So everything's been great so far, and I'm not coming at this from like a school administrator perspective. I run my own company. It's an ed tech company. But, I have been a teacher and I've worked with a lot of school districts, and, the thing that I think would be the most broadly applicable with all the different like unique school situations across the country and internationally is transparency. So you mentioned this like fourth industrial revolution. So we're kind of on the verge of like Ed 3 or Web 3. And I like to call this a trust revolution. So like all the technology in Web 3 or Ed 3 lends itself towards greater transparency. So I think that empowering communities and school leaders and families with transparent, pathways for what their students are going through. So it's a little bit what David said. It's about like making good on those promises, but like being really transparent through the entire life cycle of a student, whether it's in primary, secondary, post-secondary, or maybe beyond, I think would be the best first step towards, the next step, right? Is just being very transparent and letting families and communities kind of make informed decisions about the boot camp, right? Like why the boot camp versus the community college. Like if the outcomes were like radically transparent, then you could make more informed decisions.
Right. Right.
Thank you.
And just for the record, that decision in our house was by, I couldn't tell my 18-year-old anything because of course he knew everything, right? So, and if you've had kids, you probably, maybe you've been there too.
I mean, it's tough because the career outcomes are so transparent for some of those boot camps. That's the value proposition as well. You can go to school for a few years, or you can take this boot camp. You can be surrounded by people that are probably your age. You can walk out and potentially get like a high-paying job. But, you know, those kinds of promises have lent themselves to be problematic with places like Lambda School. But that aside, it is a good option for some students, but it's just hard to tell.
It is, but I will also say that, you know, I was a hiring manager for 25 years in technology organizations, and my best technologists were people who studied liberal arts. They had degrees in political science or humanities or geography, and they had just a different way of solving problems. You know, I feel like we can teach the technical skills, but that, you know, becoming a whole person is something that takes time and guidance and nurturing. So. Okay, so let's talk about how some schools are actually getting this done, because I think what you're pointing to is you've got a lot of data and you've got a lot of students, and if you're going to deliver on the promise, you have to really sort of get to the heart of that promise for each individual student and what matters to them and what matters to their community, right? And how do you sort of deliver that student out so that they can fulfill their promise in their next roles. I want to talk a little bit about Dr. David Kellerman. I don't know, some of you may have heard of him. He's extremely inspirational, and I'm happy to share some more information about some of the work that he's done in Sydney. But what he's really done that I think is really compelling is he's used AI technology in the classroom to help students through processes and answer questions and sort of function as a teaching assistant, not for so much I'm going to teach you the material, although there is some of that, but more around keeping students engaged and making sure that they understand what the expectations are and helping them move forward. And what that's done is it's freed up his faculty, his teaching assistants, and other students, right, to have a view into what kinds of questions are being asked and to keep the class moving, but to also move students along and then reserve that capacity for higher value conversations, human to human. And the other piece that he's done that's really interesting with the AI technology is he's collecting the data on the questions that students are asking the bot and how they're interacting with the bot. And so he's able to take that data and create a case. So if a student needs a follow-up, he's aware of how many times that student has asked questions or what kinds of things that they're struggling with. So as an instructor, he can follow up with them and make sure that they're having a good experience. But he can also inform how he develops his curriculum, because he's actually seeing how students are interacting with the course materials and what they're actually doing. And he's doing this in both in-person and hybrid learning. And I think what's really interesting about it is he's hit on the fact that students are very comfortable talking to bots. You know, they don't seem to have any issue at all talking to a digital assistant. And so they're very open, and he's had very good luck with it. So this is one way of sort of leveraging the data that he's getting from students to crowdsource his curriculum, but also to make sure that his faculty are freed up to talk to students about high value topics. Does that resonate? Is there anyone on this call who's using bots in the classroom or in your administrative processes? Okay. I don't know if this is of interest, but I think, you know, he's got a really good blueprint that he shares, and we'd be happy to talk to you as well about, you know, how you can leverage this. There are lots of ways to do this, either with our products or with other products. So But I think the idea is for all of the things that you have. Oh, so you're using the Qbot that Kellerman used. Yeah, it's pretty awesome, isn't it? All of the things your students go through processes where every 4 years your class sort of turns over. Every year you have a new freshman class, they go through the same processes, they ask the same questions. All of that stuff can be sort of codified in FAQs, and you can have a bot interact with students to get them through some of those administrative processes faster, and to support faculty and to support advisors with answers so that you're freed up for conversations. Okay.
Do you mind if I ask a quick question about this?
Yeah, please.
I've seen some research about the use of bots in the sort of non-academic sort of side of things, and of course I've seen it used here within his large lecture engineering classes. At University of South Wales or other places, are we seeing sort of a use of sort of a bot or sort of personal assistant or personal university assistant across those boundaries? In other words, where I could ask as a student the same bot for help on my homework within a particular class, as well as administrative questions about choosing a class or has that sort of integrated solution been used or developed by South Wales or others?
I don't know if they're doing it at South Wales, but I know other institutions where they're doing it, and where they're actually using bots to complete processes, right? So a student saying, I worked with an institution that, 80% of the calls that came into their call center were around password changes. And so they trained the bot to actually complete a password change. Or how do I, where's my balance? How do I pay my balance? And so guiding a student through completing payment of a balance and then helping them register for their next classes and notifying them when they're registering for 2 classes that are going to create sort of a toxic pair, right? Like students aren't successful when they take those 2 classes at the same time. So intervening and helping the student make the right decision so that they could get through the registration process more easily, and then also helping them in the classroom. So it becomes sort of that holistic, I know you, Adam, from how you register, from what your pay types are. I know what dorm you live in, or if you're a commuter. I know what courses you took last time. I know what your grades were, and I know what questions you're asking. So I'm equipped to pull all of that information together to sort of anticipate your needs. Does that help? Okay. All right. So that's bots. Let's move on. This actually is a school that we worked with, the University of South Florida, that was trying to address that persistence problem, right? So they had students who, when they were falling between the GPA of 2.0 and 2.9, they noticed that those students were falling off for whatever the reason, right? There were probably factors that led them to drop to that GPA, but they were certainly falling off the map. And so what they did was they started to use a platform that helped them analyze student mindsets. So going beyond demographics, right? You're way more than your zip code, but bundling students against synthetic profiles into mindset groups that said, okay, if a student has this type of mindset, say they're nervous, then the best way to interact with that student is through this channel with this kind of communication. And so they were able to personalize nudges to students based on their mindset and actually help them move forward. And they really had great success. So what they saw was, from the 926 students that they used as the control group, 98.7% of the test population re-enrolled. So they did see an uptick, and they learned a lot, and it was actually automated, right? So the partner that they were working with, Discourse Analytics, actually has millions of synthetic profiles that they go against. So it's all anonymized, but they are able to say, a student's mindset generally doesn't change. And part of the reason why maybe we fall off the map in reaching out to them is that we're not getting them in the right channel or in the right way. And I can tell you, as Jennifer was saying about she and her sister, I have 2 kids. They are very different. One of my kids I can talk to in a certain way and he responds, and my other son, absolutely polar opposite. Same zip code, raised the same way, same DNA, but they're totally different. The next one that I think we're going to show is actually also with the discourse analytics platform, but this one was around FAFSA completion. And so I think this gets to that story about how do you make your funnel, more productive, right? So we're seeing, and I know there are steps being taken to simplify the FAFSA, but we still see students falling off in the FAFSA process, and then they don't know how to fund their education, and then they drop out. And so this actual use case was with a very large R1 institution in the East. And what they did was they did analysis of a population of students to look at their mindsets and communicate with them to help them through that administrative process. And what they saw was that in 2.5 weeks, 23% more in the test population actually completed the FAFSA and were able to matriculate. These kinds of processes, right, that maybe you want to attack. It's very quick to get these things set up. It's not expensive, and you can see results in 2 to 4 weeks. I think the secret, and we'll talk more about this, is sort of picking the right use case and saying, this is what I want to test this on, right? I mean, you don't want to go through and say, I'm going to look at the mindsets of everybody in my institution and try to change the way they behave. But if you target a particular process or a particular area where you really want to have an impact, there are ways to get at that. We're also seeing some institutions do this kind of activity to try to increase institutional donor yield. So it sort of goes across the spectrum. Okay, questions before we move on? Okay, let's take a look at the next one. So this is Forsyth County Schools in Georgia. They had actually a 96% graduation rate, very large school district, 51,000 students, and a 96% graduation rate. They're, in the Atlanta suburbs, but they wanted to do better. And so they had siloed data, just like most of us. And what they did was they built a project to start to aggregate data and bring it in into a centralized data repository so that they could run machine learning algorithms on it. And as they're running those machine learning algorithms to see, how students were progressing and where they were at risk, they democratized that data by putting it into dashboards and putting those dashboards in the hands of educators. And they defined that data in a way that was very easy to take action on. So you can see in the bottom here, they're saying these students are college and career ready. Of the college and career ready, this percentage are extremely on track and this percentage are extremely off track. And then they could dig into that data and figure out how they intervene with those students to help them become college and career ready. I don't know if we have any K-12s or departments of ed on this call. One of the departments, the states that I work with in the East, for K-12s, their goal is to have students college or career ready by 10th grade. So that's a big ask, right? As these students who are coming in and they're growing up at the same time. And so having a dashboard and being able to see where each student is at every step of their journey really can help move them along. Okay, I think we have one more, right, Jennifer?
No, that was.
Nope, that's it.
All of them.
Okay, so those are the stories. We wanted to sort of touch every angle of the journey and show you where institutions and districts are having success with different approaches in different areas. And hopefully that resonates with you or maybe inspires you to think about how you can do something in your own environment. So we'd like to hear from you, if it's okay, if you could share out your current successes and what you aspire to. So what's working for you and what would you like to do next? And feel free to place answers in the chat or come off mute. Can I go to the chat and say, I see ASU is doing very innovative things with a variety of bots. Stephanie, would you mind telling us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Sorry.
No,
Um,
I realize I'm putting you on the spot. I apologize, but I'd love to hear what you guys are doing.
No worries, no worries. So I think, I'm with Robots and Pencils, and we're partnering with ASU as they're starting to think through how, to your point, like what are some of the processes that can be automated and add value, and serve at scale, obviously, is something that's always a top of mind for them. So I know that they've, really kind of exploring different technologies to be able to bring that to bear. So it's interesting applications around across the spectrum, onboarding for new students and, student success coaching and things like that, as well as I think Kayla talked about some of the work they're doing in their experience center to support students, for services support outside of the classroom. So things like that.
That's awesome. Can I see Lisa?
Oh.
No, go ahead, Jennifer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say Marvin made a great point about hybrid learning and how it produced incredible student engagement, which I would love to hear more about, because this is a huge hot topic right now, especially with hybrid learning. And I think many schools are trying to navigate how they can keep students engaged with this mix of different environments. So don't know if you want to come off mute and talk a little bit about that too.
Oh, I'm off mute. During the pandemic, the school that I work for, we are a large online, small traditional, and I'm an online professor, and I also run a program. I'm program director for CJ, or criminal justice. And just, I guess, the impersonalness of the online with no interaction. And I like people. I was in law enforcement for 34 years. I want to see faces. So to engage with students, we started a hybrid where you have class time once a week. It's just like seat time, and you're on Zoom and you're sitting there and we're discussing the topic for that week or the lecture for that week, and we're going through discussion questions. And taking the time to do that, it not only increases engagement with the students, but you get to learn more about the student because they start to involve their personal life there. And, I might be teaching and my granddaughter will come in, I'll put her on the camera and say, hey, Benelli, tell my class hi, and things like that. It allowed me to see, or allowed my students to see me as a person, not just a quote unquote professor. And it also loosened up my students for me to see them as people, and sometimes produce their needs, their wants, their desires, that I could address that holistic concept that you were talking about earlier.
Awesome. I think that's really awesome, and I think that it draws people in, and they need that, right? I mean, students need to know that there's a community around them that want them to be successful and that are interested in them as people. So I see another post from Lisa about a structure. Current success includes a structure that's collaborative. Aspirations include more data analysis and dashboard environment. Lisa, will you tell us a little bit more about what you're thinking there and how you've had success?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me? I haven't
Yes.
spoken on this computer in a while. So
yep.
Our collaborative kind of environment is being, I think, strengthened by the fact that we have some campus-wide committees that have been established that really have representation from across campus. And the expectation is that when we come together to talk about some of the larger challenges or successes, that then that information gets disseminated back to the respective aspects or different offices on campus. That's been really helpful. in also bringing information to these decision-making groups, essentially. So we have been able to move the needle on several things on campus. Most recently, we created a strategic enrollment management plan through one of these campus-wide committees. And now it's being put into effect through that. I think one of the things that we're craving, though, is more accessible data, because I think sometimes specific offices on campus collect data from their students that they're serving, or through programs, or even just for information purposes, and that doesn't always get shared throughout campus. So we're trying to establish some more maybe dashboard kinds of environments that can make that more accessible to a variety of people on campus.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay. I don't know how.
Really and there's something that I would like to also, as we do keep going on, you all have shared out a lot of really amazing things. I think what would also be great for the group as a learning too is, as you guys have obtained these successes, what kind of steps did you have to take to get there, and what kind of barriers were in place that you guys were able to knock down? Because like I said, the whole point of this presentation is to realize that what seems unobtainable sometimes is very obtainable, but we kind of just have to hear about what other people are doing to figure out how we can get there. But throw it in the chat. I love to hear about it, because I'm also curious as well. And so we're really wrapping up to the end of our presentation here. We don't have to do this in terms of a more group discussion base. This is actually something that you all can keep and share and screenshot. I know that maybe this little chart seems like very simple, but sometimes I do feel like when we go back to the basics, it really helps uncover some of the most pressing challenges that we have. So if there are moments where you can get together with a core group of folks from your different schools and bring this up, go through this activity together, because I do this quite a lot with my own teams as well, and really discover when it comes down to the goal that we're trying to meet, what are the North Stars, those outcomes that we want to reach together? What are the opportunities in place that we can leverage to get to that? What are the blockers in place? How do we mitigate those? How do we challenge it? And then also, how can we work together to make sure that we are putting actions in place to get there? And usually, more often than not, doing this sort of exercise, even though, like I said, it feels very simple and we're going back to the basics, it really does help when, especially, there are people in place that have their reservations about how to get to that end goal. If they can visualize and see that these challenges might not be as big of a roadblock as we think, then it really helps ease that process of getting there. So I do recommend going through these steps, saving this, keeping it for yourself. So really, what's next? Throughout this entire presentation, I really hope this was of some value to all of you guys. And if we could have you guys walk away with a few things, which is identify those key outcomes, right? Think to yourself, what do you really want to see? And you guys already mentioned so many amazing things in the chat, and also talked about it off mute of what you want to see. And from what I've heard, it was those three things: engagement, retention, enrollment, and especially that big one that I heard, the diversity. I really think that those are things that you guys should take back and push for. And then Tracy already shared out a lot of different use cases. Pick a few, pick two, and don't try to do it all at once. Actually, in this deck, we also have a few more examples that you can actually look back on and realize that there are many different methods and ways to achieve the things that you want. And then also consider journey mapping, right? There's a whole different, there's a whole pathway that you can take to get there. Work with the people alongside you. And then also always embrace user-centered design. I really, really swear by this, because How can you produce something, a new process, without getting the feedback from the people who are using it? So go to your students, go to your faculty. They will give you the best feedback, and they will tell you what they need as well. And then also inventory your data, figure out where it's at, and it doesn't have to be you, but figure out someone who can. And so really, that's basically it. This is our information. We'll also throw in the chat window our emails and our LinkedIn's to connect with us. Me and Tracy, we're very, very, very passionate about this, and we can talk forever on it. And this was only covering maybe just a fraction of what we could talk about. So if there's any point that you even just want to hop on a call and just talk about literally anything around strategically improving the entire education system, or just chatting it away, really just feel free to reach out to us. Our doors are open. Tracy, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just, if we can be helpful to you in any way, let us know. If you'd like to be connected with some of the folks who you saw in some of these success stories, or maybe people in your region who are doing same types of things or who have the same types of interests, we're happy to make connections as well. I do want to thank you all for sharing your stories. It was really inspiring, and appreciate you having us today. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.